Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddham dhammam sangham namasami. Dear friends, let us sit for meditation. I'll give a guided meditation. I think today we will take a metta meditation, loving kindness meditation. And as you follow along with my guidance, I invite you to notice that you have the power to choose how to direct the mind, how to direct the awareness. It's not necessary to be the victim of whatever random thoughts or wanderings the mind gets into. Instead, we can all choose to put all that to the side for the moment and just choose to direct the mind towards a meditation procedure. So now I invite everyone to come up to an upright and balanced posture, feeling the weight of the body, the balanced quality of the upright back, and the energy that's involved with sitting upright, combined with the relaxation. You just need the small amount of energy to stay upright. And having established that balance can allow the body to relax, dropping the shoulders, making the belly soft, feeling the contact with the seat or the cushion or the ground, as if you were sinking into the earth, planted on the earth. Letting the face be relaxed. Letting go of whatever you were thinking about before, or any excitement or emotions from the day. Just take a rest from all that. Taking a couple of deep, long breaths can help to release tension. Breathing in long, breathing out long, breathing in long, breathing out long. And letting the breaths be relaxed, just doing its own thing. Aware of the subtle energies in the mind, subtle energies in the body. aware of whatever feeling or sensation is there, coming from the body or coming from the mind. And from that mindful place, bringing in a simple phrase of kindness for yourself, like, may I be well, may I be happy. Whatever phrase is comfortable for you. And silently pronouncing the phrase of kindness, feeling the shape of those words. May I be happy. May I be happy. Repeating that phrase every few seconds. And aware of the deep meaning of this kindness for oneself, what it would be like to realize the best wish we might have for true happiness, what it would be like to always take care of our own true happiness. Repeating that phrase, aware of the meaning. and noticing if there's a shift in the feeling. What feeling was there before? And when you begin the thought of kindness for yourself, if the feeling is different, this is the feeling connected with kindness. Imagine the feeling of kindness located in the body, where you can feel it. And imagine the feeling of kindness gently spreading throughout the body. And continuing to repeat that phrase every few seconds. May I be happy. Anytime the mind falls away from loving kindness, come back to the open awareness, just noticing the body and the mind and what it's like in the natural state. And then starting methodically bringing up the phrase, the meaning, and the feeling to come back to loving kindness meditation. And then bringing to mind one real person who is very lovable and dear for you. And speaking to that person by name with the phrase of kindness. Oh, dear friend, may you be happy. Repeating the phrase for your friend, your lovable friend. And aware of the feeling of kindness. Letting the feeling of kindness fill the entire body. and choosing one actual person who's not very dear or very lovable, just some person, and turning the thought of kindness for that person, speaking to them, calling their name with the phrase of kindness. May you be well. Aware of the feeling of kindness for that neutral person. Letting the feeling of kindness fill the entire body. And then bringing to mind some other person who may be difficult, someone who's not very nice. And without going into the story or thinking about their bad qualities, just give the thought of kindness, speaking to them by name. Oh, may you be happy. letting the feeling of kindness fill the entire body. And letting the thought of kindness go out to everyone. Everyone in the house. Everyone in this little computer room. May all of us be happy. To all as to oneself. Everyone in the town, the country, the world. May everyone be well. To all as to myself. bringing the thought of kindness for all beings, for that difficult person, for that neutral person, for that dear person, for oneself, for each one, and for everyone. That simple wish for their true happiness and true welfare.
Namaskar, Ajahn Sobhana. Remember me, Niyara? I'm at seminary now at Nirotaram, Chom Thong, Chiang Mai, for 3.5 months already.
I see.
How you been doing?
Beautiful robes. It's wonderful to see you and speak with you.
Yes, wonderful to see you too. You've been gone too, huh? Yes. You been do okay?
Yes, I'm going to.
Good.
I'm adding a spotlight so that the others can see you.
All right.
Nyada was, as a laywoman, she was living with us for a little while.
Yes.
And then when you returned to Texas, I think you were living just like a monastic in your house.
That's right.
And then
And I still, yes, ma'am. Yes, Ajahn.
And finally, you had a chance to get the formal precepts to support.
Yes. And I'm happy.
Okay.
I'm happy to be in this life. Let me tell you, I'm happy every minute. Yes. Everyone do okay? Ajahn Tataloka, okay?
Yes. But right now, I'm going to just go ahead with this class. And
yes, Ajahn. Please do.
Okay.
Please do. Nice to see you.
Yes. So the way that I was guiding the loving kindness meditation was a summary of a specific meditation procedure that was taught to me to implement the metta meditation practice. There are several different versions or ways to do metta meditation, and all of them have the intended result or the outcome of bringing out a state of mind which is deeply, profoundly imbued with that wholesome intention for the goodness and welfare of beings, for the happiness and success of beings, both internally for oneself, externally for others, internally and externally, without making distinctions among people, just the desire for success and true happiness. And then this state of mind is beneficial for our progress on the path in so many ways. We know that if you asked the Sammasambuddha Gautama, our teacher, what was the essence of the teaching, he might say that it is dukkha, the cause of dukkha, the cessation of dukkha, and the way to the end of dukkha. So that cessation of dukkha and that way to the end of dukkha is very deeply connected with understanding what's actually harmful for beings and what's the opposite, what's beneficial for beings. A lot of people are so busy just getting through life that they could not really be in touch with what's good for them. They're just doing what they think they have to do without really thinking about it, or just reacting to things without really thinking about it. Or it could be that they're influenced by society and they're doing what they learned from their parents or what they should do, but they've not really internalized it. Or they're following the rules or regulations that they learned from their religion or from the laws of the country or something like that, just following the rules and regulations, but not really internalizing it. But in order for us to be successful in this path, the second point of the Noble Eightfold Path is right intention. The intention of generosity free from greed, of kindness free from anger, and of harmlessness free from cruelty. And all of the long trail that we've got to go down as we move towards our own freedom and liberation is guarded by having some kind of a internal sense that we can look to our own hearts to see what's really beneficial and what's not beneficial. It's like if someone was orienteering in a trackless wilderness, they would need to have a compass, and they'd need to know how to observe maybe they have a compass on a map, and they can observe the terrain around them, so they know what direction they're going, and they also know where they're at. And if they're navigating over the wide ocean, I think they must have an instrument called an astrolabe, and with that they can read the position of the sun or the stars, and they can tell where they're at on the whole wide ocean and which direction they want to be going in. And so the same way with this practice of loving kindness, you can get planted within your own heart, your own really strong, intuitive, inner sense of what's really beneficial and what's not beneficial. And this is your great protection to be able to stay away from mistakes, stay away from doing unskillful things that would create hindrances and difficulties along your path of practice, and can motivate you as you're developing in the path of practice. But just hearing about metta meditation and not actually doing metta meditation is much less beneficial. If you've read a book about it and you think that it would be good to do metta, but you don't actually do it regularly, then you might have some kind of shallow intellectual idea of kindness, but it would not be internalized more deeply into your own psychology. And so we want to realize that we can choose to practice. We've got the right, we've got the power. If we have some bad habits, some bad psychological habits, that we very frequently are caught up in self-hatred, or frequently caught up in anger and resentment and holding grudges, or frequently caught up in some other kind of a negativity. One of the fantastic things that one can discover in this practice with Buddhism, with the path that's been given to us, is that those kind of states of mind, the harmful ones, are literally, they're optional. We don't have to be the victim of our negative emotions, our negative thoughts. At first, or depending on one's life story and what kind of baggage we brought from the earlier times in our life, or what kind of conditioning we have because of our genetics and because of our society and everything else, it could be that from time to time that we would be overwhelmed with negativities, and we might sometimes actually experience feeling like we're a victim of these negative states, and we don't know how to get out of it. But then, at other times, if we're especially if we are swimming in the ocean of the Dhamma, surrounded by the teachings of the Dhamma, then there can come to be these wonderful moments when we realize, oh, wow, I've been carrying this grudge, but I don't have to. I can just send it away, and then when I send it away, I would feel so free and so joyful and so calm, so bright, and so then at that point, I'm ready to go on and maybe to go deeper and find some of the deeper karmic complexes that I might still have within my psychology, and to gradually clean those out. There's a particular two suttas that I wanted to quote for you. One is from the Anguttara Nikaya, from the numerical discourses. This is the first set of the numerical discourses is the Book of Ones, and in each of these short suttas, the Buddha is saying, "There's one thing, O monks," and then he goes to the next sutta and he says, "There's one thing, O monks, but it's different from the other one." And so he could go through the list of, say, the 5 hindrances, and for each hindrances he gets a sutta say, "There's one thing, O monks," and it's this one of the things on that list. So in this sutta, he says, "O monks, I do not see a single thing that, when it's not tamed, is so very harmful as the mind. The untamed mind, or the wild mind, is very harmful. O monks, I do not see a single thing that, when it is tamed, is so very beneficial as the mind. A tamed mind is very beneficial." So the process of meditation is in part suffering with making the effort to develop more samadhi, more concentration, to pick up a meditation procedure or meditation practice, whether it's loving kindness, watching the breath, scanning the body, or some other specific method. And then perhaps sometimes experiencing this mind is so wild, it's impossible to stay with this meditation for a long time. Even sometimes either for a beginner or somebody who might have experienced a very upsetting day or something like that, and they come to meditate, and the mind is so wild it's not willing to stay on the procedure for even 5 minutes, not to mention staying for 30 minutes or for the whole hour. And so then we need to learn gradually how to tame the mind, so the mind then becomes willing in the special circumstance of being in the meditation hall or on a meditation retreat, or sitting on the cushion at home at the special place for meditation, having the mind be so tamed that it's willing to obey our invitation to come to meditation and to stay on the meditation procedure. When I was a layperson, I had a neighbor in the apartment upstairs from me, and whenever this neighbor went to work, the dog would start crying and whining and be, ow, 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 and it would go on and on and on, like all day long, from 8 o'clock in the morning until 6 o'clock at the night. This dog would be crying. So the dog had an untamed mind, but actually, and this owner did not know, there are ways to teach the dog to be relaxed and calm and not to be anxious when it's left alone in the house. And so then, later on, this owner got some training, some dog training for the owner to learn how to take care of the pet and to teach the pet how to be comfortable. I think part of it is sometimes they give them a small box, so that the pet can go inside this little box and feel safe and reduce their anxiety that way. And so it's just the same way. If at the times that the mind is so wild that it's not willing to take our suggestion or take our invitation, that's an unhappy mind. That's a mind that's very vulnerable to all kinds of events, outside things that could happen, or thoughts and memories that can happen, and then getting involved in reactions to that, falling into unskillful patterns which are just promoting the continuation of dukkha. There's another sutta that I could mention. This one is in the middle-length discourses. It's called the Danta Bhumi. It's called the level of the tamed. And it starts with an interesting story. The Buddha's student gets into a conversation with a certain prince named Prince Jayasena. And Jayasena, the prince, is saying, well, a monk, tell me what you've learned about the Dhamma. And so then this monk, who's not very knowledgeable yet, explains what they've learned. It's a novice. They explain what they've learned. And then Jayasena says, that's impossible. It would never happen that a monk could meditate diligently, keenly, and resolutely and experience unification of the mind. How could that happen? And so then he walks away. And then this novice goes and tells the Buddha everything that happened. And the Buddha said, well, of course, this Prince Jayasena lives in the middle of sensual pleasures. He enjoys them. He's consumed by thinking about sensual pleasures. He spends his whole day burning with fever and eagerly seeking after more and more sensual pleasures. So someone who's living like that is not able to see or realize what can be known, seen, and realized by renunciation. He gives a metaphor of, the Buddha gives a metaphor of two people who go on a hike, and they come to a mountain, and one says, I'll just stay here and rest at the bottom. Please go up and tell me what you see. And so the other one climbs up the mountain, and then they say, oh, I can see such a wonderful view with so ponds, parks, woodlands, meadows, and lotus ponds. I can see so much from up here. And the person at the bottom says, that's impossible. There's no such thing as parks and ponds and meadows and lotus ponds. So they can't, because they don't make the effort. They don't undertake the practices. They don't get the opportunity to experience these beautiful views that come naturally to one who has made the effort, who's followed the procedures. The third or the second metaphor that the Buddha gives in this teaching is about a wild elephant. And he explains how they might go out with the king's royal elephant, who's a very noble animal, very well trained. And they catch the wild elephant on a rope and pull him back to the town. And then they tie him to a stake. And this wild elephant is really frustrated and mad and kind of crazy. This story is interesting to me. What I've read, not within the Buddhist text, but from a modern perspective, is that actually elephants are not able to be tamed in the same way that, for example, a dog could be tamed, because a dog has a natural instinct that's like part of their genetics to follow the leader. And so then if the human being becomes the leader, then the dog kind of like very naturally wants to be like very faithful and wants to be your friend and wants to follow. But the elephant is not like that. Instead, it may just temporarily be willing to follow and to obey and to do whatever is requested if the circumstances are supportive for that. But internally, they're always a free individual. Maybe it would be even like a human. If you took a human and captured them and made them into your prisoner, they would be willing to go along with whatever was required of them. But internally they stay free. But however, this elephant who's brought in, then the owner speaks to them in a very soft, gentle, and kind voice. And this helps the elephant to calm down. And then they very politely ask them to do certain tasks, like, pick this up, put this down, go here, go there. But it's very polite. What they're saying is, pick it up, sir. Put it down, sir, to the elephant. And being respected like that, and also being rewarded with some straws and some foods and treats and things like that, then the elephant can become friends and then becomes willing to do the things that are asked, becoming friends with their trainer. And so then, gradually, bit by bit, that elephant becomes fully tamed out of, in this case, out of friendship for the trainer. And they become able to do tremendous tasks and even able to withstand tremendous difficulties, like if they were taken into a battle and they had to withstand being struck with spears and swords and arrows, still they would endure them and be able to do their task. And so, in the same way, when we undertake the ethical restraints, we learn how to guard the senses by not getting caught up with the unskillful thoughts about the sign of beauty attracting our greed, or the sign of repulsiveness attracting our hatred, but instead looking at things wisely with that mindfulness, and then examining the hindrances that can come up, and finding out how to relinquish and abandon and let go of those hindrances. Being able to identify the different states of mind, which ones are beneficial, which ones are not beneficial. This is how, I told you at the beginning that loving kindness is like helping to develop that compass, that you've got it in your own heart. You're not depending on rules and regulations to tell you what's beneficial. You can look within and you can tell what's beneficial, especially if you have the benefit of listening to a wise friend or a teacher who's pointed things out to you, and then you can test them and see if it really works for you. Then with that right effort with the mind, we are trying to prevent the negative states of mind from arising. So when a negative state does arise, because we're observing within, we can say, oh, where's this coming from? How did this happen? And it could be just from carelessness, or it could be from a misunderstanding, or it could be from desire or fear. So we got to see, where's it coming from? How did this come from? And then understanding the conditions below that, then we start taking care of those conditions to not be careless, to not be fearful, to not be greedy, and to not be deluded and confused. And then we find that by adjusting the conditions, that we are learning how to protect the mind, to actually prevent those negativities from arising. Or else, if we practice mindfulness, we're finding out how to let them go after they arise. So, for somebody who's either somebody who's a beginner, or somebody who encounters a very challenging or stressful situation, or somebody who's lost track of what they're about and just become careless in some way, and like they forget to practice what they started, then they could get caught up in something, and they could spend a whole day or a whole week being caught up in something negative. But if they've developed the skill, if they know how, if they've developed some wisdom, especially if they can see impermanence, if they can see how suffering comes from clinging, and how letting go breaks that suffering. Once they've learned some lessons, learned some how to, then it could be that if some negativity arises, it's possible to have it just last a few seconds and then be finished. And then the second pair of this work that we do with purifying the states of mind is about arousing a state of mind that did not exist before. So even somebody who maybe they learned to be selfish, maybe in their culture or how they were raised as a child, they learned at the very beginning that one should be selfish. And it's gotten very deep in them, and nobody ever explained to them the pleasure of generosity. So they don't know. So in this case, that person they need to develop something that they barely know how. It could be that once in a blue moon, just by accident, a generous thought comes by, but they don't have it as a regular practice. They don't know how to just bring up the thought of generosity anytime that they want to, or to make that thought become stabilized and continuous, so that it's always either on the surface of our thoughts or very just a little bit below the surface in the background of our underlying tendencies, so that then on many occasions it's very easy for that kind of thought to come up that's arousing something that doesn't exist. And then when we got something good, then noticing that clearly, developing it, making it continuous, making it grow, making it develop to the maximum. So these are the practices that would be done by somebody who realizes that they've suffered too much from having a wild mind. And they're sick and tired of being a victim of a wild mind. They want the mind to be tame, without cruelty or without blame, just in that gentle, nice way that the elephant trainer was so nice to the elephant, and so respectful and appreciative to the elephant, but still he's teaching him what to do. So the same way you can teach the mind. I'm going to say that part of what you're training is your conscious thoughts or conscious understanding, and partly you are training the subconscious or the underlying tendencies. And it can happen that the training is happening to the subconscious, and you can't exactly tell what's happening because it's subconscious. So you may not immediately know that the meditation practice or the effort you're making is fruitful, because you can't always see, or you can only see a little bit. You can't see all of the good that you're doing for yourself. But then because there's been some kind of a shift at that deeper level or at the subconscious level, then in many different kinds of circumstances, when there's an occasion that is calling up some kind of response, we can see that because there's been some change in our underlying tendencies, then something different is what arises. So instead of irritation or frustration or negativity or greed or some kind of negative thing that happens, a clear understanding, interest, calmness, generosity, kindness, that those more beneficial traits are the things that come up. This is what I think it means when the Buddha said that there's nothing more harmful than the mind when the mind is not tamed. And there's nothing more beneficial than the mind when the mind is tamed. I shall stop here, and I'll leave time for a few questions. If anybody has a question, or if you're willing to give a report from your own practice, how you have had that experience, that the tamed mind is the happy mind. And I'm going to call on a seminary. Nyado, what is your Buddhist name now?
still niyada because
Still niyada.
I'm not Bhikkhuni yet. Yes.
Okay.
My question is because since I'm here is about 3 months and a half, and I have a strange experience. It's not doing when I'm meditation, but doing when I'm praying. But you know, when you praying, you have to focus what you do on praying. So another word is another way of meditation also. And I heard the sound of crying. I heard a sound of crying. Doing, I do pray. And I just want to ask you, what you think of that?
I think that they could be tears of happiness, or they could be tears of some sadness that you had before, and the sadness is going away. But then while it's going away, first it comes out through the eyes, and so I wouldn't be very concerned or worried, and I would not make it into a distraction. I would keep my mind on, like the paritas or the puja or the suttas or whatever it is that you're reciting. The recitation of these Dhamma passages is a wonderful practice that the monastics do a lot. It's really fantastic when you can memorize some words of the Dhamma, and then anytime, day or night, you always have them available, and you can bring them up, and it's like giving yourself a Dhamma talk, and also like directing the mind, so the mind is like following along. It's like you're giving yourself a guided meditation while you do these recitations. So it's a beneficial practice, and these kind of reactions, different things can happen. I don't know what it means exactly for you. Maybe someday you'll know that it meant something, but don't worry about it and make it a problem. Just keep doing the right thing.
Yes, but see, the people here, because I've been kind of like ask them who crying, so they've been know that I hear something that no one hear, and they kind of like in Thailand, they meant to be like non-human that want to share my merit, so I have to do sharing merit. The next day I do pour the water, doing morning chant.
Yeah.
To share my merit to them. That's how they suggest me, and I did for whoever come and cry for me to hear.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I'm going to call on Ren.
Thank you, Aya. I just want to share my experience during the meditation. I'm someone who's really like try to rationalize things, try to think through things. So my mind's very, very wild and untamed, and it put me in a lot of misery. Today, I was able to, I don't know if it's a back door or something, but I was able to just, when you said repeat, may I be happy. And as I repeat that, I knew I wasn't happy. I was like, I've been having a bad day, but then I kind of somehow access part of my body that's not happy, that's stuck, and it's like chest, abdominal, upper abdominal area, and I sense that stuck energy. And then in my mind I was thinking, it's not thinking, not any kind of reasoning, it was just kind of a curiosity. Say, what if it's gone? What if it's gone? It's just a part of a body, and it's not real physical, like it's not because I ate something. What if it's gone? And then it immediately lightened. It's just amazing. And I don't know if I could consistently do that, but it feels like a back door because I don't even have to do anything else. Just like it's a physical thing, and the physical thing can be imagined gone and be gone.
Right. The mind is connected to the body, and it works both directions. So even this visualizing the feeling of kindness as something that's located in the body and spreading it through the body in a way that's kind of like using imagination, but at the same time, it has a way of conditioning the mind at many levels. Yeah. So it definitely, I would suggest trying to repeat. Even the guided meditation that I just did it's on YouTube, so you can listen to it again. And try doing the same practice and see if you get the same or similar result, or how it evolves. Yeah,
I will. Thank you, Aya.
that's good. I'll call on Diana.
Hi, it's funny when I listened to that, I thought, may I be joyful. Excuse me, was the thing that came to me, and it's like giving myself permission. May I be? Yes, I may. And I am not just a survivor. I am a person living. My background, I was raised by a borderline parent who emotionally tortured and abused. And it took it took a journey. The longest journey, they say, is 18 inches, the heart and the mind. And I remember the day when it opened up, and I was with a group that I retreat with, that I used to retreat with regularly. When the connection was made. And then there's still work to do, because you reach a higher vibrational, you literally, vibrate at a higher radio frequency, if you will. And everything that's at the bottom of the duck pond of your soul, that's all duck poop, comes up for that healing. And it'll come up, like all at once for healing. And it's like, wait, slow down, get in line. And at the age of 60 is when I reached okay, everything's falling apart again, but I'm calm. Okay, that's an achievement. And then now I'm going to be 65. And when you said, may I be well, may I be happy, and the word that came to me was joyful, and it's like, yeah, I may. And Ren, when you were saying you had a bad day, the bad day, the things that happen in your bad day is it's like a string of pearls. Whatever something bad happened in your past that reminds you, that today reminded you of that bad thing in the past. If you go back to that past thing and pull that string out, it's like a bad day can happen, and it's like, okay, you may be happy too. Whoever's bringing on that bad day, and it's like, but it's like a MC Hammer song. Can't touch this. You can't touch this good. So when you said that, it just struck such a chord. Yes, I may. So thank you, Aya.
I want to appreciate how some of the comments that we've heard are kind of individual, aren't they? And each person, especially, well, I don't know if it's true for everyone, but I noticed when I was earlier in my practice that my understanding of the Dhamma, or my experience of the Dhamma, was sort of unique and individualized. And now that I have read and studied and practiced for several more decades, it seems like I experience it more in the general terms of the Dhamma, like the pattern of my experience falls into the pattern of the Dhamma, and the path of practice as it was explained. And it's because of, this is what's been put into the mind through reading and thinking and discussing over these several decades. The main, what I want to emphasize is not to get hung up on the individuality, but simply take the procedure, the teaching, the suggestion that's offered to us within this Buddhist teaching, and keep some consistency in trying to follow those steps. So if you're doing breath meditation and it seems like your head has been detached from your neck and it's gone up to the ceiling, well, just keep practicing breath meditation. Don't meditate, don't get all involved with my head is on the ceiling. Or if some other different experiences happen, but don't give up the meditation procedure that you've undertaken for that set. And then, the psychology is individual for each person depending on their history. But I'm not, the particular about why I suffered is less important than there's dukkha. The cause of dukkha is craving. And with the cessation of craving is the cessation of dukkha. And so I keep practicing for that general pattern, irrespective of what are the particulars for my circumstance. Now, I'm going to go ahead. I want to give everyone a chance. I want to call on Travis.
Yeah, so this question is a little off topic, but so Sita, right? I've been kind of reading into this because I've been trying to find something within Theravada Buddhism which is eternal, and I know that's kind of off topic, kind of tricky, but Sita is supposed to be like the mind of subjectivity, and I was curious because it's not supposed to be personally you, but everything's connected to it to a degree, right? So would since everything is that, would that not be eternal, Sita?
Well, okay, the Eightfold Noble Path, or the path of practice, is impermanent. Nibbana is timeless, and there are several realities that the Buddha spoke of as being eternal. He said, hatred never ends through hatred. Through non-hate alone does it end. This is an eternal truth. He said, elsewhere, regardless of whether or not a Buddha exists in the world, these things are true. All conditioned things are impermanent. So those fundamental patterns are true, but the person, the individual personality, are what we could experience as this is me. That's not permanent.
Right.
And it's constantly changing. Yeah. I hope that.
Yeah, it's just I think that there's a deeper level of philosophy in Buddhism that a lot of lay practitioners, myself included, have trouble wrapping our minds around. Even getting way more in depth in this, because I see almost similarities at first glance with almost Advaita Vedanta.
Yeah, so Vedanta they have a different concept. There's a concept sort of like a higher self or pure self, which is unconditioned and eternal. And so coming like in connection with that as part of the quest. And in a lot of really interesting ways, Vedanta Buddhism and Vedanta and Theravada Buddhism or early Buddhism are, some things are like the same terms that are just put in a different configuration. So like in doing that meditation to discover that unconditioned self, what they refer to as an unconditioned self, they are giving up the small ego. And they're giving up any kind of attachment to the small ego in order to connect with something else. And but in Buddhism, the Buddha said that he tried to discover this eternal self within, and he did not discover that as a belief or a concept that leads to liberation. And so therefore, he didn't teach that concept, that he taught instead that we should try to get our mind around the idea that everything is impermanent and that there's nothing can be clung to. And it's the clinging to anything at all, even at the most subtle level of concepts or self-conceit or something like that, that what is referred to as acquisitions, like you can take away, naturally in psychology, you can take away the eyes, the ears, the nose, the tongue, the forebrain or the back of the brain or this side of the brain or all the different parts of the body, you can take them away, and still naturally a human being tends to create something that is experienced as being the self.
That's
Even
true.
if they've been really impaired and like big parts of their functionality has been taken away, they still experience something and they make it into a self. And so this is the challenge, is to those acquisitions, when that gets blown and there's not the clinging to anything, that's the pathway to liberation in our training. Yeah. Okay?
Thank you so much. That was detailed and I liked it.
Okay. Now, so many hands up. I don't mind staying. I hope others will be. If you need to leave because you're tired, you may leave, because we've gone over what we announced as the time, and I'm willing to stay here and speak with all of you. So Richard, can you help us out here?
Thank you. That sutta example where the one friend goes up the mountain and then he sees so many things.
Yeah.
There's a subtle thing in there that can be missed, which is after the other friend is brought to the top and he's given some time to get his breath, and then he looks around and he sees, oh, you can see all these things. He says, oh, I couldn't see it before because the mountain was blocking my view. So they're looking to see what's on the other side of the mountain where the friend had never been before. So it's not that they're looking back and seeing, because he would know if there were parks and things, in the area that he lived in, right? They're actually looking, and so that's kind of like the difference between being in this world, samsara, birth and death, and attaining nirvana, seeing what's beyond that. People don't necessarily believe, when they hear that. And part of what was it, Travis's discussion?
Yeah.
He was talking about eternal. Well, it's very interesting. I'm not going to put any spin on it or anything, but when the Buddha attains enlightenment and he goes back and he looks back 91 aeons and he just sees this continuous pattern, he says no first cause could be found, for this wandering and roaming, in this samsara. And he had disciples that looked back about 1,000 lifetimes. Yes, one, not 1,000 I mean 1,000 cycles. Okay. So that's sort of like an indication of some kind of eternality. And like you said, Nibbana, right, is timeless, right? But, anything that has no beginning or end is timeless, really, if you think about it, because time is irrelevant to it. It doesn't matter at all. So I think from both sides, the Nibbana side as well as his looking backward and saying no first cause can be found, for this ignorance and wandering and roaming, from this realm. But I did have one question about the Bhikkhuni Niyada, where she said that she was praying. Now, praying is not a normal, what I think of as praying, Theravadan tradition. So I'm just kind of curious about what she meant by that. Anyways, thank you very much.
I think Nyada was referring to the chanting and the puja, but
May I have that opportunity?
Yes.
Okay. I'm agree with you that, the more you let go your ego, the more happiness you will happen inner of you. Because right now, every one of us basically come back and born with that you're clinging, you hang on self, that's so strongly. So whatever that surround you, that kind of like try to come to territory and do to yourself, whatever you so-called my thing, myself, you're gonna be unhappy. So you have to kind of like eliminate the ego, and that make you happy. And I want to answer the gentleman about the meditation. When you do prayer, you have to kind of like don't make a mistake when you do prayer, and that is another way of focus. Make your mind narrow to the word that you're gonna pray. So-called, you can call that meditation. In another way, it don't need to be sit down. Like if you're driving, if you pay attention in driving, that's another way of meditation too. Just whatever to focus your mind in one thing, not distract to the other thing. That is called meditation. That's why I say, when I do prayer, it's another form of meditation.
Would you give an example of the phrase that you use in prayer, as you call it?
Basically, it's familiar to you. Use like Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. But the word and the rhythm is it's just in Thailand.
Yes.
It's different.
Okay, thank you. I want to give Damon a chance to comment or ask a question.
Thank you. I would like to stay with this thread for a moment about prayer, because Richard seems to be, asking, a reasonable question about, hey, what's the deal with prayer? So I also would like to hear from you, Aya, regarding this, use of the word prayer as distinguished from other devotional practices. I personally feel like to say, may all beings be happy, is really not much of a leap from, dear Lord, may all beings be happy. And in Thailand, I suspect that on its way, Buddhism on its way from India finally to Thailand, blended with the indigenous populations' cultural practices, which may have been prayer-like and included prayer, and has since then been blended, such that they, the Thai laity like to pray. So yeah, I'd like to hear more about the clarification between prayer and other practices in Buddhism.
So the example that Seminary Nyada gave of Itipi Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Sama Sambuddhassa, or chanting Itipiso Bhagava Arahang
Yes.
Sama Sambuddha Vijja Charana. So this would be like a recalling and reciting the qualities of the Buddha as a means of, so if you're doing this with a consciousness of the meaning of those words, then you're remembering the marvelous elevated qualities of the Buddha and our faith and confidence in the Buddha. And yeah, it's true that for someone who believes in Christ, or who believes in God in heaven, and they're doing something similar, so they may gain superficially, there's a kind of a similarity. But the qualities of the Buddha are not the same as the qualities of God. The qualities of God are like, I am all powerful, I am all seeing, I am omniscient, or something like that. And the qualities of the Buddha are that he's the one who is perfect in practice and understanding. So he walks the walk and talks the talk. He lives what he understands and understands what he lives. He's the teacher of gods and humans. He's the one who is capable of explaining the Dhamma in a way that caused the Dhamma to become established in the hearts of his disciples, and so on like that. So I was brought up as a Christian, and I learned that one could ask one's guardian angel or ask God for a favor to, like do something for me. And in Buddhism, there is a very strong emphasis that one should be an island unto oneself, or one should be, like the Dhamma is the refuge, and you make your own self the refuge. And so the Buddha points the way, but the person has to realize it for themselves. And so Buddhism is much more like there's no self, but still it's a self-help program, because you do it for yourself, doing your own work and coming to your own realization, rather than having by the power of some external thing. Even when in Buddhism it says that, like, to initially to get like the right understanding or the right view, that the voice of another and one's own mindfulness and clear comprehension are the two factors. So hearing about it from another is given as part of the ground of realization. So once in an eon, you have a Sama Sambuddha where everybody has forgotten the path of wisdom. But then there's the one genius who comes once in an eon who is able to realize and discover it for themselves. But then after that, the great majority of people and beings don't need to discover it for themselves, because they can hear about it. And then having heard about it, then having gotten a tip, then they're able to integrate and realize that through their own experience. Buddhists do acknowledge the existence of gods who are not considered to be the same kind of eternal, all-powerful, and eternal thing like the other religions do, but still there are beings who are much more long-lived than we are and more powerful than we are. And so if you want someone to do you a favor, you could pray to the gods and ask them to do you a favor. And there is a certain amount of that sort of in traditional Buddhism, but it's not considered to be extremely important.
Yeah,
And
could you also speak a little bit more? You've made several points in the last couple of classes, and I think everyone recalls that you've compared Buddhism to some Christian mystics by name, Teresa de something or other, Francis d'Assisi, who used prayer in a very powerful way that you felt was very comparable to our tradition.
yeah, it is comparable, but because of their view, they can. I'm sure that those mystics achieved something like samadhi or jhana or concentrated meditation and those blissful states. I don't think they would have realized nibbana because that's not what they were aiming for. They're aiming for heaven. They're aiming like to be with God in heaven. And I don't really want to comment too much further, and it's actually not proper for me to comment about Christianity or any other religion because it's not my practice, and so I'm not actually qualified to speak at the deepest level about what those practices really are about. Okay. Maureen has a hand up, and then I'll come back to Richard. You're
You're on
muted.
mute, Maureen.
There. I think, well, what's happy? What's those the various things that you listed as part of metta. What are those things? I find it more helpful to approach it from compassion. I think that's because that perhaps distances yourself from instincts getting involved too quickly. If you can see a scenario and with compassion, or how a person's behaving with compassion, or how yourself is behaving with compassion, then you're sort of teasing apart the conditions that perhaps triggered an unhelpful way of going about something or a helpful way. So I just favor compassion over metta as approach, as one of the Brahma Viharas.
Yes. They say that compassion is the response when kindness encounters suffering. Then compassion is the way it manifests, that we wish for that suffering to come to its end. The strength of loving kindness, the strength of compassion is that it's very skillful in the presence of suffering, or in the presence of difficulties, in the presence of all of the inevitable problems, failures, and difficulties of life. Then compassion is definitely the right medicine. The power of loving kindness is that it doesn't matter if a person is suffering or if they're happy, if they have no accomplishments or if they have great accomplishments, that still loving kindness is just kind, just wants their welfare and wants what's good, without being concerned about the qualities of oneself or another. So that metta applies in all circumstances, they say. But whatever practice is the most natural is certainly suitable to be the one to develop. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the Brahma Viharas are very helpful because I see that sympathetic appreciation or,
Yes.
you know, appreciative joy.
Right.
That's in a happy circumstance. And that gets you away from being jealous or
Right.
wanting that, you know, for yourself.
Right.
So I really like the Brahma Viharas as a way of approaching situations. Yes. Anyway,
Skillful
thank
practice.
you.
Thank you
Thank
for
you
bringing
very
us back
much.
to that. Okay. Richard, briefly, because it's already 9 o'clock, so I think that will be the last question or comment for tonight.
I just wanted to point out, there was the question earlier, like, well, what's the difference between these other types of, let's call them religions, for lack of a better word, or philosophies, wherever. And the Buddha says that that any system like that that doesn't contain the Eightfold Noble Path will not take one to his goal, which was liberation of mind, liberation by wisdom, or easier to understanding, and nibbana. So his system has this other goal, and that goal, that Eightfold Path, is based on the first three noble truths. So basically, you're talking about the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path, and that's what these other systems don't have. They're either trying to get the favor of a god in this life and possibly a life after, or they're trying to attain different stages of meditation or different planes of existence, but they're still all caught up in the idea of samsara, you know, the cycle of birth and death. And even the Buddha, he had teachers that taught him to go all the way up to, you know, neither perception or non-perception, you know, the most subtle level, you know, before the level that he found, you know, beyond sense perception or cessation of sense perception. But so that's basically the difference. The Buddha is shooting, you might say, for a higher goal to free us from samsara, to free us from birth and death. Anyways, that's all I mean. Thank you.
I could go on for another hour about this, but I'm going to stop now and just bring us back to the main takeaway point that I wanted all of us to gain, which is that taming the mind is a very fruitful way to make progress along this path. And it's worth it to exert the right effort, investigate with yourself, and find out how to tame the mind. That tamed mind is the happy mind, and that's a mind which is capable of receiving the deep teachings about the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path. So now we can pay respects to the Triple Gem. The Lord, the perfectly enlightened and blessed one, I render homage to the Buddha, the Blessed One. The teachings so completely explained by him, I bow to the Dhamma. The Blessed One's disciples who have practiced well, I bow to the Sangha. Thank you for this very lively meeting tonight and for your practice. Please make the effort.
Thank you, Aja. Thank you for your
Thank you,
teaching.
Aya.
Bye. Thank you.
Um,